Hey everyone, welcome to the NFL edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for November 8th, 2016, brought to you by FantasyLabs. I'm Matthew Freedman, the editor-in-chief. A quick note before we jump into the show, we are recording this early on Election Day so that we have ample time tonight to sweat the results as they come in. So two items. One, don't forget to vote. And then two, at FantasyLabs right now, we're still ironing out some of our projections. For instance, the ownership projections aren't up yet because we are recording early, so just keep that in mind. Let's jump into it. I'm joined by regulars Adam Levitan and Peter Jennings on Twitter at Adam Levitan and CSURAM88. And also joining the show is Sean Koerner at _oddsmaker. He's the director of predictive analytics for Stats and the most accurate NFL predictor at Fantasy Pros from 2013 to 2015. And I believe that right now he is number one in 2016 rankings. Sean, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on the show. My dog is barking. Sorry about that. That must mean my wife is coming home or something. So anyway, it's great to have you on the show. How did week 9 go for you?
It was pretty good. I think I haven't tallied up all my results because I play a lot of Thursday, Monday slates and a lot of the smaller sites that do include the Monday night game. But I think I broke break even, which is good. I had my first losing week last week, and it was a big one because I was overweight on Ty Montgomery, so it was good to get the confidence boost back this week. But if you told me, an hour into the morning games that I was going to be break even, I would have loved that because I just had the worst core ever this week. So, but I do mostly cash games, and I did well there, so was able to pretty much break even.
Levitan and Pete, how was week 9 for you guys?
Yeah, I did well playing, but I think I lost a lot in the skill game props. So, there's no amount of money that can save me from when I lose the skill game props. You know what I mean?
I was in the same boat. I literally was watching, and like some good things were happening for me in DFS, but I was thinking about the skill game props. I'm like, man, all these calls are just going the exact opposite of what I said. I was thinking about it. It was a great week in cash for me. I had a really good cash game teams on both sides of the tournaments. I ended up breaking out relatively. So net positive week, but pretty neutral considering how good my cash games were.
Yeah, so Levitan, I guess for both of you guys, some six-pack equity was lost. Levitan, you went 7-13, and Pete, you went 7-11. I was lucky to escape with my shirt at 5-4 thanks to Jahi. Guest Davis Maddock, seemingly a man with the wisdom of Buddha. He went 13-4. He really did his damage with his calls on Michael Thomas and Stephon Diggs. So the result now is that Pete is in the lead at 47-43. Levitan is 42-38, and I am an uber efficient 29-19. Sean, our last two guests are a combined 20-7. So what is your plan going forward to keep that hot streak going? And then also tell us a little bit about your projection and ranking process. What is it? And then where are you in the process right now, given that it is Tuesday?
Yeah, so this week I prepared a little bit earlier than normal so I can dominate the skill prop game. But I usually, I use the first part of the week to, do more of my data analysis and the statistical side of what I do. And then, later, ramping up for the Thursday slate, I start to put more time and effort into allocating, targets and carries. So usually this part of the week, I'm mostly, just looking at the data and getting just a sense on, the blueprint for how each matchup's going to unfold. I guess the twisted way I kind of think about my projections is, as soon as I make my initial projections, that's the worst they're going to be. And then throughout the week, I make them less bad. So I'm constantly, tweaking them and, trying to find evidence why they're wrong. It's sort of a twisted approach, but that's, my Vegas background. I'm treating basically every stat I'm projecting as a prop that I would, take bets on. So that's kind of my mindset and my approach throughout the week.
That's awesome. Well, I look forward to you destroying all of us later in the skill game.
Can I ask Sean a couple questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sure.
Well, what is your Vegas background, Sean? I'm not quite familiar. Are you a bookmaker in Vegas?
Yeah, so I focused on stats in college, so I have a strong stats background. And then basically the day I graduated from college, I moved to Vegas and I started working for the MGM Raj. So I got a lot of, and I was 22, so they were like grooming me to be more of a lines maker. So I learned a lot there, and I got to deal with a lot of the action. I dealt with a lot of sharps firsthand. So we could talk about that a little later. When you see those skewed betting percentages, it's kind of funny how the money can kind of be even on those, just because of sharp action. So I have a good sense on why lines are being made the way they are. But I was in Vegas working for the sports books during the Patriots undefeated season, so it was a pretty crazy season to be there. But
yeah. So let me ask you, there's been a lot of talk about props. Like, one thing that I always think is that because there's such low limits on props in Vegas, that most of the books do not spend time on them, and therefore the props are not very sharp, and therefore I don't put that much stock in them. Is that a mistake?
Yeah.
Do the bookmakers actually put effort into making sharp lines on the props?
Yeah, it kind of depends what you're looking at. Unfortunately, we're not able to bet on more of the European sports books because their player props are way off. Bovada does a pretty good job, but yeah, I do put a lot of time and energy into betting on the props. So you can use them to a sense to kind of see if you're way different, but they have a lot of opportunities where there's a lot of edge that can be had with people like us that put time and energy in projections. I think they're very beatable, and I spent a lot of time Sunday, finding which ones are off. And
yeah, no, I didn't mean to bet them. I meant to DFS.
You kind of have to be speculative on them, but they're definitely not perfect.
Right. Okay.
But they're definitely guidelines.
Right.
All right, let's get into the show. We're focusing on roster construction and game theory. For more, check out our NFL dashboard. The positional breakdowns come out on Thursday, and the previews for each game are out by Friday. Sean, let's start with you, since you say that you've gotten a head start on the research. When you're kind of creating your tentative potential cash game lineups or looking for whatever you might be putting into tournaments, who are the guys who you are locking into your cash game lineups right now? Yeah,
so obviously I try to get my projections right, and then I'm an optimal lineup type of guy, but I do force some guys out. Like Tavon Austin always pops up into my cash optimal lineups, and I just exclude him because there's no reason to be using him. But this week it seems like the obvious play is David Johnson against the Niners. I mean, that's going to be the free square of the week. But they kind of make it easy to afford him and another stud running back. I think Mariota is a little too cheap. I think this week I'm going to have a lot of him. And I think he gives enough salary relief that he could be pretty chalky. Because, if you take him, you can almost afford David Johnson and Elliott and still get Antonio Brown. You kind of have to get creative at wide receiver, but I think they made it pretty easy to go David Johnson and Mariota and have a ton of flexibility there.
You're on mute, Matt.
Levitan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I haven't done my ownership projections yet, but I certainly think that David Johnson will be the highest owned player on the slate. I think Mariota will be very popular. I mean, he's just been playing so well, and I think the way Green Bay plays now, they throw so often that it just creates more plays for their opponent. Like, the clock just stops a ton, and we'd expect them to score and force Mariota to keep his foot on the gas. You could, make arguments about how good Green Bay's run defense actually is. I tend to think they're more middle of the road than elite or bad or whatever people want to say. But either way, I think you can throw on Green Bay without Sam Shields for sure. I think at tight end, I'd expect Antonio Gates to be pretty chalky again. It's assuming that Hunter Henry is out. I mean, Antonio Gates at like 40-something% ownership, just smashed last week at 3K. He only moved up to 3,900. I think Alshon Jeffrey could end up being really popular as like kind of that sexy play that we see a lot of people getting on. I think Moncrief was that sexy guy last week. I think Michael Thomas got to be that sexy guy a little bit. We've seen DeAndre Hopkins have it. We've seen Allen Robinson have it. I kind of think Alshon will be the sexy play here. I don't have the numbers, but Alshon and Cutler is definitely more profitable for Alshon than Alshon and Brian Hoyer. So I think Alshon down at 66 will be real popular too. And then we have all these weird running back situations like Rob Kelly. I mean, the Redskins just come out and say that Rob Kelly is going to start and he's 3,600. Darren Sproles is now the lead back for Philadelphia. He's only 4,300. So there's really some situations like that. And we don't know Carlos Hyde's status. DeJuan Harris is only 4,100. So we're going to have situations like that with the running backs like every week where one or two could emerge as really good plays.
Yeah, I think all that makes sense. David Johnson's definitely the chalky guy. I think that almost everyone will have in cash games. Cutler I was looking at too, is as gross as it sounds at 5,300. I don't hate that. I probably would pay up a little bit more for Mariota. Quarterback's interesting this week. I mean, Cam's a lot cheaper than he's been in the past. I'm not sure how I feel about him in this particular spot yet, but at 6,800, I don't think I've ever seen him cheaper at home. So that's certainly interesting. At the receiver position, I agree with you on Alshon Jeffrey. I think he could end up being pretty heavily owned. Curious to see what happens with Jordan Matthews. A lot of people starting to talk about him as well. I don't think he'll see too much Trufant running out of the slot. I think that other guys have emerged for Philly, which could help him quite a bit. A lot of these other guys, it's tough to kind of nail down just with the injuries and whatnot that's going on. I mean, number one in my model right now is Tavon Austin, so I'll probably have to follow the lead and just X him out. Getting a lot of grief already this week about him. That's kind of the gist of it for me at this point. I think that it's kind of a more wide open week at this point, although I do think people will be jamming in David Johnson, potentially Le'Veon Bell or Zeke, and paying a lot at running back, which could lead to very similar rosters. But we'll see how the week kind of breaks down with injuries and where people are leaning. Darren Sproles, I guess, is another guy that was really disappointing last week. Could have easily had a huge game. Holding Amari Cooper, barely stepped out of bounds on a punt return and could have walked into the end zone and then at the end of the game if he would have connected on that screen pass. So he's another guy who's seeing a lot of run that could be intriguing and could really go up in ownership depending on what breaks throughout the week.
I would like your thoughts on Demarius and Emmanuel Sanders at New Orleans. Obviously, trusting Trevor Siemian is something that no one ever really wants to do, but it is an ideal spot for those guys. Any thoughts on them?
Well, I think it's like the last 9 or 10 games played in the Superdome have had at least 60 points. So probably smart to invest somewhere in the Broncos. Capri Bibbs, fellow CSU guy. Hope he gets some run. We'll see if that backfield situation gets murky. But, the passing game for the Broncos certainly makes sense. Delvin Breaux is back, I believe, now. So maybe that downgrades the passing game slightly. But, I'd probably buy Emmanuel Sanders more than DT even in this spot. I like both. But, I think we'll see if they're popular. I don't know if they will be. Adam never plays these guys. So what are your thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, so it could be an exception spot. I mean, the Coors Field of DFS as dubbed by Freedman. You should link that article again this week, Freedman. But yeah, I mean, it's just we know that Breeze has a chance to really play well. Will he play well against Denver's no-fly zone, though? That's really the question. Because if you think Breeze can be held down, then it's like, well, I'm not that excited about Manny and DT. The guy I want to play is Booker. I think that this story that got out this week about Capri Bibbs taking over is just total BS. Like, Capri Bibbs was grossly outsnapped and outtouched by Devontae Booker. And, yeah, Bibbs broke off that one long run. I don't think that's going to make them turn the backfield on its head, but Booker is 7K. Like, if he was like 5K, I would just be like all in on Booker. I think that he still has control of this backfield, but at 7K, I don't know if I can pay that.
Yeah. A couple things just real quick on the Broncos. The Booker situation, I agree he's the more talented back, and I think if he was totally healthy, they'd give him the lion's share of the work again. My one concern is the shoulder injury has limited him, and he's made a couple comments, and the team has made a couple comments pertaining to the effect the shoulder injury is having for him. So that is one mild concern. I still think he'll be the guy, but I think Bibbs might see a couple extra snaps versus last week. The one thing with the defense, Wolf has a hairline fracture in his elbow. So, I mean, it's possible he could come back sooner rather than later. I doubt he plays in this game. It really comes down to pain tolerance once they stabilize it. But if he's out, that hurts them. The running game for the Saints could really have a big impact. I do still think they will be able to throw a little bit. Talib's another guy to pay attention to with his back status. But, the Broncos defense is certainly not healthy and looking a lot weaker than it has in the last couple of years.
Yeah, Talib's already announced out, right?
Well, I missed that, so there you go.
Well, yeah, I think so. And you guys' matchup page, Harris will be on Snead for most of the game, I think. So, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I think the Saints offense sort of dictates what I'm going to expect from the Denver passing game. But I think, DT and Sanders, their price is cheap enough where I would definitely consider them this week.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the players, I guess, who have maybe good matchups or who are having good seasons, but guys you might be looking to fade. And Levitan, let's start with you there.
Yeah, so I think that DraftKings has gotten a little bit overboard with pricing of possession receivers. So I was really on Jarvis Landry in the middle of last week, and I was like, as the week went on, I was like, am I really going to pay $7,100 for a dude who has such a low touchdown expectation and for a dude who runs 4 yards down the field? Like, he has like no shot at big plays and no shot at scoring touchdowns. Like, I'm not paying $7,100 for that. And now he's up to 72, I believe. And like Larry Fitzgerald is kind of the same thing at this point in his career. He's 7,600. And yeah, he's playing San Francisco. It's an amazing spot. I love using slot receivers against San Francisco. 7,600 is a lot to pay for a guy who's running such shallow routes. Now, Fitz certainly has a better touchdown expectation, and maybe you consider him a leverage play against David Johnson. But my first instinct was that Larry Fitzgerald is just far too expensive.
Yeah, I hear you there. Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, I like that take. One guy that's been red hot all year that I probably won't be investing this weekend is Matt Ryan. I do think that Atlanta could show up in this game and play well. Their offense certainly is fantastic, but I'm still buying Philly's defense. This is in Philly. Probably not going to pay $7,300 for Matt Ryan. Doubt I'll have a ton of Julio Jones or any Atlanta guys where they're priced. I think this is a spot where you probably want to fade Atlanta. Could come back to bite me, but I'm still buying this Philly defense.
Sean?
Yeah, I think one of the matchups I'm keying on is the Eagles back at home against the Falcons defense. Trufant's, he's questionable, but I don't think he's going to be on Matthews too much. So that's a matchup. I think it's a get right spot for Wentz, and I could talk about later in my bold calls, but I'm liking the Eagles matchup this week.
Mm-hmm. So Levitan, you mentioned there Fitz, and not a spot where you. I mean, it's a good situation for him, obviously, but he might be too expensive. Any thoughts on John Brown, JJ Nelson, guys there?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, like, I got so much heat on Twitter from like people. I didn't even make like a sickle cell like joke or anything. I was just like, listen, like this sickle cell thing. I obviously feel terrible for these guys that have it. It's just, I was just trying to make a point that John Brown, Tevin Coleman, and now Tom Montgomery have all been limited by it, and they're not listed on the injury report. They just, the coaches say they're fine, and it comes out on Monday that these guys are limited. So like, I'm real hesitant to roster John Brown. Like, I was on him in GPPs, I think when they played the Panthers, I believe. I was real big on John Brown, and like, he just wasn't there. He doesn't seem to have it. So I'm concerned about using Ty Montgomery. I'm concerned about using John Brown. The guy I'm interested in for sure is JJ Nelson, who, I mean, before the bye, the Cardinals came out and said that he has taken over as a starting receiver. I expect him to play ahead of Michael Floyd. I expect him to probably play more snaps than John Brown. So yeah, I think JJ Nelson, I mean, the dude's like literally 160 pounds, but he can get down the field. He ran a 4.28 at the 2014 combine, though, which was a fastest at the combine. So he's definitely a big play threat. Like, I don't know about using JJ Nelson in cash. I know Al did that week when he had a good game. I think it's a little thin, but I could see it, I guess.
Are you guys worried at all about the blowout factor? I mean, I probably have my NBA hat on right now, but that game, I'm just worried about getting out of hand, and Palmer might end up throwing 230 yards or something. So
yeah,
kind of worried about that.
I think Bruce Arians, along with Belichick, is like, I'm sure there's some data to back this up, but like they are actually willing to run up the score. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, true.
They're willing to run it up until like the midway through the fourth quarter. So
Yeah.
I do think that there's a mild concern for the passing game, but I'm buying Arizona. I mean, how do you not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one thing last week on this pod, I thought Adam was really sharp with the San Francisco at home off a bye. And then I got word from the sharp guys that their favorite investment of the week was Saints.
No.
And, no, like hands down, number one, and that's why the line moved like crazy. Like
Oh my.
all
Yeah.
the sharps piled in.
Yeah. It was whenever a number is around 3.5, you can pretty much tell where the sharps are. If it goes up, usually it means sharps and squares are doubling up.
On
But
the
if
same side, yeah.
yeah, but 3.5 is such a key number. Although I haven't looked into it with all the extra points, that whole situation. I don't know if 3 is as key as it used to be, but yeah, usually 3.5. It's a good indicator where the line moves, where the sharps are.
I even got a Skype message in the middle of the week from a buddy who's very, very sharp. And he said, listen to your podcast. Couldn't disagree with you more. Biggest investment of the year on Saints.
Oh God.
So normally we're on the ball with that stuff. But
honestly, let me say this. I'd rather be wrong than take a road favorite. That's just fine. I'd rather be wrong.
I think it's more. The reason I even bring this up, I think the big point here is San Francisco is so bad.
Yeah.
Like they are so bad. I mean, look at the team total right now for Arizona. I mean, they're favored by 13 points, and Arizona hasn't even been great this year. So
yeah,
I'm investing everywhere I can against the Niners. And I'm investing everywhere I can against the Browns. I think that makes a lot of sense going forward.
Yeah. Let's talk about game selection. Really important. And I should say that on the site, we have a new page. It's a contest guide. You can find it at fantasylabs.com/content-guide. In one place, it provides all the information for all the tournaments out there. So the slate, entry fee, number of entries, the amount and percentage that goes to first, and then also the top and the top 5 and top 10%, and then also the percent of entries that cash. So if you play GPPs, that's a resource you definitely want to check out. So with that said, Pete, what are some of the GPPs that you have your eye on this week?
Oh, this is a great week. I mean, we got the Millionaire Maker bumped up to $444, which is fantastic. I know that doesn't suit everyone as well, but probably the most excited I've been for Millionaire Maker. Big question for me is how many people will max it out. It does cost $66,600 to max out. As of now, that's the plan, and hoping to run well because this is a big spot, and certainly for the guys firing hard at these things, I think this is a spot where you have a little bit more equity than you might in other spots with Millionaire Makers. So I really like that. Big on the Thunderdome. I mean, just kind of the same jazz as always, but the Millionaire Maker much more enticing for me this week.
Levitan.
Yeah, no, even for somebody like me that doesn't play a lot of tournaments, I'm excited about the tournaments on DK this week. I mean, I don't know where this came from, but they have like a $44 buy-in with a $1.25 million prize pool, a $4 buy-in with a $2 million prize pool, and then the 444. Like, it's all pretty awesome. And like, I'm thinking about going pretty hard at the 44 and the 4 and at least put 1 or maybe 2 in the 444. Also, last week I played the power sweep for maybe like the first or second time this year, and I thought it was really interesting. That's the 3 max $150 buy-in, and I thought, it's like a lot of people just put their when you get like single entry or 3 entry max, a lot of people just put their cash lineup in. They're like, the single entry, I'll just put my cash lineup and hope to run well. So I think there's some edges there to be pushed with being a little bit extra contrarian in single entry and 3 entry max, where we can really try to go for first, kind of the Ricky Bobby first or last type of deal.
Nice. Sean.
Yeah, so I typically don't do the Millie Maker, but this week it's tempting. I feel like I have a shot. I mostly cash game single entry player on Sundays, but I finally figured out with my process that Thursday I like to go big on GPPs and mass entry. It's a little bit easier for me to find spots and go smart contrarian. Whereas Sunday morning, I'm usually too wrapped up in things to really wrap my brain around exposure and whatnot. So I tend to focus more on the cash games. But this will be interesting, and I think I'll definitely be in this week's Millie Maker.
That's interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about what your smart contrarian approach for Thursday night slates looks like?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a guy that's a game time decision, usually the ownership levels on the backup are just way too low. And by the time we get to Sunday, if Ware's announced out, everyone's going to have Chalk West. So I can take better chances on guys in that spot, but that's why I avoid cash games for the Thursday slates. I just feel like for me personally, I'm a chalky guy. It's easier for me to kind of get good value going contrarian on Thursdays.
It's interesting. What are some of the stacks that you were looking at for this week for GPPs?
So I think this is a week where people might sleep on Big Ben and Antonio Brown. It was kind of frustrating having any Steelers shares this week just because they basically pulled, he was Blake Bortles this week. But I think I'm going to be pretty heavy on Big Ben and Antonio Brown. This is just a spot where, they might be a little underweight. So I feel that's who I'm going to gravitate towards, more of a conventional stack anyway. I like them at home against Dallas. I know Dallas will try to keep it away from them a bit, but Big Ben, he's a monster at home, and I tend to never sleep on him when he's at home.
Mm-hmm. Levitan?
Yeah, so I think for conventional stack, and shout out to friend of the podcast, Evan Silva, who texted me about this morning, but I mean, it's a pretty good spot for Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. I mean, let's think about what's going on here. They're coming off of a bye. Seattle played the crazy Monday night game, short week, going across the country to New England, and we've seen this Seattle defense struggle at times. I mean, Tyrod really hit him up last night pretty hard, and I don't think that's a fluke. And the way you can attack Seattle's defense is often in the interior. So I think Brady Gronk makes a lot of sense. It's certainly expensive. I think Brady James White, assuming that Dion Lewis isn't back, makes some sense. And I mean, Julian Edelman hasn't gotten off yet, but typically where I would like to attack Seattle's defense is on the interior. So I think Julian Edelman makes sense. And we kind of see these teams, like the Patriots, when they think they have a specific game plan or specific edge, they just kind of give up. Like, it's possible they give up on the run game. Evan had some stat. How many times they've run the ball in their last 2 or 3 meetings with Seattle. It's like nothing. They just give up. So we could see a lot of volume for Tom Brady.
I like that. I would say that's definitely not conventional. I think that's going to be contrarian because of the spot. Yeah, I mean, that's just me. I think so, but I'd like to hear what Peter thinks.
I was going to talk about the Brady Gronk stack as well. I think it makes a ton of sense. I mean, you look at the team total for the Pats, they're a big favorite here. It's a Levitan classic where you have Seattle on a short week traveling east. I think there's a lot of merit to that. I think the stack that makes the most sense to me in just terms of value and a points per dollar stack, and it could even be a double stack that I like quite a bit, is Phillip Rivers, Dontrell Inman, and Antonio Gates. Inman saw 9 targets last week. He's only 3,400. Really like him. Basically the Chargers have come out and said Travis Benjamin desperately needs to buy. Tyrell Williams, Tyrell the Gazelle, battling stuff as well. So Inman is definitely the beneficiary of the injuries there. Obviously, we still expect them to play in this spot, but I think Rivers is putting up fantastic numbers here at home against Miami, who's been prone to getting, basically destroyed by the pass. I think it makes a ton of sense to go with Rivers and the cheap options. I think it'll be popular. I mean, I think Gates, if Henry's out again, will probably be the most heavily owned tight end. In the 1K double up, Antonio Gates was 73% owned. So it's conventional, but I certainly think it makes a lot of sense. And obviously, with that cheap double stack, you can get guys like David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Zeke Elliott, Melvin Gordon probably doesn't make as much sense in that stack, but you can get all the expensive running backs, which I think will be a popular roster construction.
One quick question. Aaron Rodgers, the most expensive quarterback on the board. He, I guess, apparently has that CSU Ram. I don't know what I would say with this, but the CSU Ram eyed swagger back. And
I was getting a lot of crap for that, by the way, when he was sucking. I probably got 30 or 40 tweets like, "Oh, there's no swagger right now."
Yeah, that garbage time swagger. He got it back.
To your day job. No more scouting for Jennings. Yeah, I still like it. He found it at the end.
No, he did. But so, he has like this quartet of wide receivers, right? Any thoughts on what you would want to do with those guys and what looks like a pretty decent spot for Rodgers, even with the price?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rodgers will be one of the heavier owned guys. I certainly think he makes sense. He was right there as one of the other conventional stacks I wanted to mention. The issue is, who do you pair him with? My lean right now would probably be for tournaments, Jordy Nelson. Jordy probably has the most touchdown equity of pretty much any receiver in the NFL right now, in good spots for Green Bay. So that's where I would lean. It's tough to trust Montgomery at this point, given how few snaps he played. Devontae Adams now is a little muddied with Randall Cobb playing. So he has all his weapons back, so I think it makes sense, and I think Jordy Nelson's probably my favorite stack. Do you guys have any preference with someone over Jordy with Rodgers?
No, I mean, I've given up trying to figure it out. Last week, I tried Adams. Thank God for that garbage time touchdown. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Jordy's the guy in this spot. If I'm going to pair him with anybody.
Levitan? Any thoughts?
Dude, I talked about it today. Like, I have so many regrets about just not jamming Rodgers nude, with like, I should have known after dealing with the John Brown situation that like Ty could be limited. I should have known that Randall Cobb could come in there and muck things up for Devontae, So the clear answer in hindsight, obviously, was just nude, and then I could have done a lot of other things. I could have played Tyrell and Michael Thomas. So certainly regrets there that I didn't just go nude Rodgers.
You don't like Jordy. I mean, Jordy hasn't been quite as explosive, but 7 touchdowns already this season.
Right. Yeah, so I think the problem with – well, not the problem with Jordy, but, like, he's not separating whatsoever anymore, right? Like, he makes contested catches at, like, an elite rate. So, obviously, he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. I just don't think that, like, he has, like, a 202 in him or whatever, So, that's fine, but like, it's – I don't think the ceiling is quite what it was pre-injury.
I mildly disagree with you there. I do think that he's lacking separation. If you watch, I rewatched that game. Jordy was pretty much wide open a couple times, way down the field, and one of which Rodgers threw to him, but he like slowed down. He definitely lost his explosiveness, but he's still basically getting a lot of these. He's still running a lot of these routes way down the field, and I think in the right scenario, especially against the Titans, who are awful, I do think he has pretty big upside. I mean, we could see one of these guys fall down. We could see him make a great contested catch. I mean, he did have a couple really big opportunities down the field, and he still ended up with 94 yards. I mean, I still think that I don't know. I think he has a potential to go 2 touchdowns, 150, 175 yards, which, I mean, that can win you a ton of tournaments. And 13 targets last week as well. I think he definitely is moving up in terms of my projections right now. I do agree with you, Adam, that the eye test and just the separation is not there, but he's still getting a lot of opportunity, and in the right situation, he could still have a really big game.
One quick thing to say about Nelson, he has been living on touchdowns so far, but the spread between the market share of air yards and the market share of targets is pretty substantial. Like, he's the guy who's getting the ball deep for that team. So it really doesn't take all that much for some of those targets to turn into a good chunk of yards. So and as Pete said, that really could happen at any point. Let's get to some of the contrarian stacks, and Levitan, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I guess Brady and James White or something is a contrarian stack. I didn't know, but I guess we'll find out. One other one that came to my head, I don't know if it's contrarian or chalk, but I mean, I want exposure to Cam at home where people think, I don't know, do people think that Cam is like not good anymore? I'm not really sure, but if they do, like, I certainly want exposure to Cam. Kelvin Benjamin is 6,800. I feel kind of the same way about him as I do about Jordy, where there's a lot of touchdown equity. But Kelvin Benjamin is part of this spread, the wealth kind of offense. So I don't think you have to pair Cam with anybody. But, yeah, I think Cam, if you can figure it out, Olsen, Kelvin, Ginn, I don't know, could be really profitable. I mean, as Pete said, he's 6,800. I mean, that's really cheap for him at home.
Yeah, love that call. I would prefer to pair him with Olsen. Peters is gambling a lot as a corner, but his coverage grade is going up a lot, and I do respect the play that he has. I mean, it might not matter too much with Benjamin, though, because he's such a freak in terms of his size and jumping ability in the red zone. But I think I would lean Olsen if I was all right. I'm going to have some Cam stacks, so I think that makes the most sense. Contrarian stacks that might make sense, and it pains me to say this because I'm not going to touch Jarvis Landry again in cash. But Tannehill to Jarvis Landry in a game that I think could shoot out, that might make sense as a contrarian stack. You can run back in that same lineup. Guys like Antonio Gates, Dontrell Inman, Tyrell the Gazelle. So certainly think there's a lot of game stackability there. Also, if you wanted to, you could have Melvin Gordon in the spot, hope that it's all garbage time for Tannehill. He has been kind of bad throughout the whole year, but I think there's some upside there. And then I really like Jay Cutler as a contrarian stack. I'm not sure how much it'll come to fruition, but I love Cutler, Alshon Jeffrey, and assuming Mike Evans can clear the concussion protocol, Mike Evans game stacks. I think that's a good way to differentiate, and you probably won't have as much money at running back with those stacks because of Mike Evans' price, that you might have a little bit different roster construction as well.
Is Cam Meredith just dead? Is he no longer a thing that anyone wants to consider, even in GPPs?
No, I mean, I think Royal might be returning this week, and that would be the death of Meredith. I agree with Pete. I think just Cutler and Jeffrey, and I'm not going to dig too deep on that passing attack. So I'm pretty much done with Meredith. My unconventional contrarian stack would be the David Johnson, Andre Ellington duo. So a double running back stack. I circled this on my calendar a few weeks ago, and I'm hoping it's still under the radar. But it's been pretty profitable playing both running backs going up against the Niners defense. Last week we knew it was a kind of a timeshare, so that was a little more obvious. But this week, if they get up big, I could see Andre Ellington just having some 80-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter in garbage time or something. So I might have little exposure to the double running back stack for the Cardinals.
I thought your Carson Wentz call was coming there. I guess that's bold calls, right?
Yeah, that's mostly bold calls. But yeah, the Carson
like that stack. I specifically didn't say it, but I think that there's some upside with Carson Wentz, Jordan Matthews.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if they're cheap enough to where their ownership levels might be higher than I want, but I think that's a pretty obvious spot. I think people are overlooking the Eagles this week.
All right, well, let's get to the bold call section of the show. Last week, I think we were a fantastic 0-6, which means that we were sufficiently bold. We were wonderfully bold. So let's see what we can do this week. And Pete, let's start with you.
All right, my first bold call for the game, and I actually feel pretty good about this one, is Titans beating Green Bay at home. They started off as a 2.5-point dog. I think it's still right around there. I think that's sufficiently bold. I think people will be still looking at the Packers, but I actually like the Titans quite a bit in this spot. Their offensive line is playing very well. I think they'll be able to run the football, and we talked a little bit about Mariota. So that's my bold call in terms of the real-life football call. In terms of player call, I was going to touch on Gronk, but I don't know how bold that is. I was going to say Gronk for at least 25 fantasy points. I think he goes over 100 yards, catches a touchdown. But I guess since Adam already laid that out as chalky, maybe I won't go that route. Do we have any status on Will Fuller at this point in time?
Yeah, it looks a little shaky. They came out of the bye and he wasn't practicing, which I think is a concern, but we'll see.
Yeah. If he was 100% healthy, I'd make a really big bold call on him. One corner that I think is not getting quite enough respect at this point in time is Jalen Ramsey for the Jags. This dude's going to be a legit shutdown corner for sure. He's still susceptible to getting beat occasionally, but I expect him to do a pretty good job on Hopkins. So I'll probably have I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to roster Jalen Strong. We've already seen how that's worked
I think
out.
He's out for a month, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm just looking stupid here with all the Houston receivers. There's some opportunity somewhere. Maybe it's Fedorowicz. Maybe it's Lamar Miller. But I'll stick with Gronk, I guess, since I just totally butchered the Texans thing here on Tuesday. But, yeah, Gronk, bold call, over 25 DraftKings fantasy points.
All right, Levitan.
Yeah, I wanted to say Titans too. This is a bad sign. We both like the Titans. Yeah, so can I say I'll say Titans also. That's fine. We'll double down on the Titans. And then my bold call for DFS is Devontae Booker for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think that it will go overlooked because he's overpriced and because people, for some reason, are falling all over themselves to be excited about Capri Bibbs.
Adam, I know it's early in the week and the projections aren't up yet, but shooting from the hip, what are you thinking right now that Booker's projection, his ownership might be for DK?
Say 5 to 8%, maybe 9 to 12. But my first
2 to 4, brother.
What'd you say?
2 to 4.
Yeah, it could be that low just because I haven't looked yet. But like when I start projecting like Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott at really high ownership, they're around the same price. So it's really hard for people to also roster Devontae Booker. You know what I mean? So yeah, we could see really low.
Here's the reason it's going to be really low too. And props to freaking to Freedman here. Jahi, same price as Booker, and I think everyone's going to click a Jahi. There's on DraftKings they have the 30 rank for San Diego's run defense. I haven't played a Jahi once this year, and I'll probably get on a couple shares and he'll totally bust. But I mean, this guy is just going absolutely ham every game, basically getting around 30 touches or 30 opportunities to touch the football. He's gone over 100 yards last 3 games, over 200, 2 of those 3, scored 4 touchdowns in those 3 games. I mean, the guy's just been unreal lately. So I think Jahi will garner way more ownership than Devontae Booker.
He's more expensive than DeMarco Murray. I mean, it's like egregious.
Yeah, they both are.
All right, Sean, bold call.
So my real life bold call is not necessarily the Eagles win because I think they're trading at -1 right now, but they're going to win by double digits. That's my bold call. And the media is going to spin it. The Eagles upset the Falcons, even though they're slight favorites. But the Eagles, 4 of the last 5 games have been on the road. So they are in a get right spot at home. And, I think this is the time I'm going to sell on the Falcons. Aside from the Patriots, I don't think there's not really a team that I'm sold on right now. So I think the Falcons will let people down this week, and I'm going to have a lot of shares on the Eagles offense and on the spread. So I think they'll win by double digits this week. My bold DFS call, Pete kind of mentioned him earlier. I thought this was going to be out of left field, but yeah, Dontrell Inman will crush value this week. But I'm going to go as far as say he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver because I do think they'll sit out Benjamin, get him right through the bye. And, I don't think Henry's status is going to impact Inman too much. But he's one of those guys. He leads the team in snaps. He leads the receivers in snaps. He's on the field all the time. And the targets haven't been there, but lately, they're climbing up. So he had 6 in week 7 and 7 week 8, 9 last week. And he dropped a touchdown. You don't want to take a guy because he dropped a touchdown, but he's getting some red zone looks now. And that's been my biggest beef with him is, they don't look his way in the red zone. But the last time I went big on Inman, he played the Saints. So I'm hoping I can be like the Inman whisperer. And I'm all in this week. So that's my bold call is he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver this week.
All right. Well, I think that's probably good fodder for a skill game prop if we want to go there. But let's go ahead and get started with this. And Sean, because you said that you specifically were prepping for this, I want to let you fire those silver bullets first. So why don't you give us some skill game props?
Sure. So this one, I just want to kind of gauge where everyone's at, but I'm going to just throw it out there and you guys can pick over under, but David Johnson's DK score this week, I'm setting the line at 26.5.
Over.
Oh.
I think it's a good line, but I would if I had to set a line, I'd set it at like 28.5.
Okay.
Man, that's a lot of points. I'm going to abstain from that skill game prop.
I mean, I feel as if I have to take the under, but I wouldn't really. Yeah, I'll take the under, but I do like I like that. Like I think David Johnson has a good game.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my rationale real quick on why I think it's a clear slam dunk over. He's averaging 25.3 DraftKings points on the season, so it's only 1.2 more points than his average. San Francisco, I mean, they are definitively like the stone cold worst. I think most running backs, you could project them for about 20% more against San Francisco. David Johnson, maybe that's a little too ambitious because that's so many more points. But even at a 10% bump, you're looking at 28 points. So
yeah, I think with him, the trick is figuring out how involved he's going to be in the passing game. If they're up 3 touchdowns, do you still dump it off to him? And
if they're up 3 touchdowns, how are they scoring those touchdowns?
Right. No, he's going to get most of the touchdown shares. I'm hoping for the over, obviously, but I think, it's a tough spot to kind of gauge where exactly his median projection should be. So that I was kind of using you guys to kind of sharpen my projection there a little bit. So
also of note, last game against San Francisco this year, 36.5 DraftKings points.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to go off.
But Pete, second game in division.
Second game in the division is worse for the quarterbacks. It's worse for the offenses overall, but the biggest plus-minus differential is quarterbacks and passing.
All right.
Adam, you're just stroking the beard over there. You got a strong beard going, bro.
It's Movember, isn't it?
Yeah. I haven't shaved in a couple days. Maybe I'll rock it a little bit. I see Adam over there stroking his neck and all this.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the second game in division splits. I'm gonna have to look harder at that.
Yeah.
So I know it's a much bigger effect on the passing game. I don't know exactly. it affects the offense in general, so I'm sure there's still negative correlation with running backs. But yeah, they're also on the road in that game. I mean, I think he's gonna go absolutely off in this spot.
All right.
They have Bowman still in that game. I don't know if Bowman was already out. What week was that?
Yeah, I think he's still out.
Well, he's out.
Yeah, they lost
Bowman's
him.
done. I'm just saying, was Bowman playing week 5?
Yeah, they lost him after the game, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Pete, why don't you throw us some stuff?
All right. I think these drafts are fun. I mean, I'll take David Johnson. You guys can take any 2 running backs you want. And, basically whoever has the highest amount of points out of those guys wins. So I have David Johnson. You take any 2 running backs. Anyone want that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take Le'Veon Bell and Zeke.
Yep.
I'll take Melvin Gordon and Le'Veon Bell.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to do Melvin and Jahi.
Oh,
Classic.
Jahi.
Got to go with your brand.
All right, I'm leveraged on David Johnson. I like that. No hedging so far for me. Just going for the gusto.
I'll take if you said you like Tannehill, Pete, I'll take Kirk.
I don't want to freaking invest in Tannehill. I don't like Tannehill. I just said he's –
all right, I'll take Kirk Cousins against any other 5K quarterback not named Mariota.
Carson Wentz.
Okay, that's booked.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, they're playing the Vikings, right? Like, how good do we really think the Vikings defense is at this point? Like, I think they're awesome, but are they like, we can't use guys against them, period? I don't think we're at that point, are we?
No, and you get Cousins at home. That's a good spot.
Pete, you have any thoughts there on taking a California Case Keenum against the Jets?
No, that's definitely not doing that. I'm debating Simeon, debating freaking Blake Bortles, which I don't think I'm going to do. The garbage time even can't get him there.
Yeah.
I'll go Carson Wentz. I like being on Sean.
That's fine.
I'll do Simeon. Just
all right.
You're all like
booked.
that.
There it is.
New Orleans.
You're all booked.
All right. I'm more bullish on you than on Jordy Nelson. Anyone in between 7 and 8K or anyone under 8K?
Yeah, if you want to give me 2 guys in the 6K range.
2 guys. How about this? I'll take Jordy and I'll take a crappy. I get to get one. You can take 3 guys under 7K, and I can take 1 remaining. How about that for the highest game?
All right, that's fine. I'll take Alshon Jeffrey, Calvin Benjamin, and Emmanuel Sanders.
Okay, I'm taking DT and Jordy.
For highest score?
Yeah, whatever receiver out of those 5 has the highest score. It's not cumulative. It's just whoever has the highest score.
Hey, talk to me about DT versus Manny, Pete. Like, should we have a strong? Is it possible to project? I feel like it's like Nurkic versus Jokic. Like, how do we know?
It's tough. I mean, before last game, I definitely would have said Sanders. I mean, he's had such a high percentage of the market share in the red zone. I mean, you look at last week, DT had 10 targets, Sanders 11. Yeah, I'd probably still lean Sanders. I think DT gets a little more coverage. I'd probably still lean Sanders. I mean, DT's 100 cheaper. Maybe that's a good reason to go him. I mean, they're basically the same thing. I mean, fantasy points this year, they're almost identical. I think DT is a more talented receiver in general, but has had a lot of cases of drops. I do think Sanders has been getting a lot more of those deep throws, which gives him more upside. So in tournaments, I've been leaning Sanders, but it's so close. It's so hard to say.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Sanders between the two. And for my other two, I'll go Kelvin and Jeffrey.
Okay, so you're taking Sanders, Kelvin, Jeffrey. Okay, same thing. So you have the same thing booked. I think that's pretty good equity for you guys. You're definitely a favorite there. But
Let me get some Jordan Reed to stay on brand. You want Greg Olsen versus Jordan Reed?
Done.
Let's do it. I mean, Kansas City is one of the worst possible matchups for a tight end.
Yeah, I'll take Olsen.
That's right, because Derek Johnson's really good against defending the tight end, right? He's like one of the best. So I guess I should have
Eric Berry, yeah.
And Barry too.
Hey Pete, going back to the Nelson one, I'm gonna take the other 3 Green Bay receivers.
Okay, so you're taking Adams, Montgomery, and Cobb.
Yeah.
Thank you, Freedman. Thank you. I like that. But that means I don't have to take DT. I'm gonna take Jeffrey and Jordy versus you.
Okay.
Like that.
Sean, you got any others there?
Yeah, this will be the nicest I'm going to be during this. I'll take Todd Gurley, and I'll let you take any running backs under 6.8K.
Oh, yeah. Let me get on that.
Yeah, Lamar Miller.
This is the nicest I'm going to be.
Lamar Miller, Matt Forte.
Levitan's going to load up on this like a buffet.
Jordan Howard.
Just pick one. I'll give you any of them.
I'm taking Lamar Miller.
Yeah, I'll take Lamar Miller too. You know, I find it funny that everybody's using like Ezekiel Elliott's season to like justify why it was a good pick. Like, how can you justify that when Todd Gurley like is maybe as talented as Zeke or maybe only a step below? But Todd Gurley was pretty obviously a terrible pick. Like, it's just all about your offense and what's around them for running back. Like, Gurley can't do anything. It's not his fault. Like, if Zeke was on the Rams, he'd be terrible too. You know what I mean?
Investing in a first-round running back is just pitiful. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, no, I was just like Gurley's spot this week is, a really tough matchup. But his price is insane to me. And I don't really know what his ownership's going to be. But
probably nothing.
Yeah, but he gives you a lot of flexibility. So he's GPP only for me. But I kind of wanted to just illustrate that, he's up there with these mid 6.5, 6.7 guys. He's up there for me. So, but yeah, like I said, this is the nicest I'm going to be. I think that's pretty generous, but he's being involved a little bit more in the passing game, so that helps him out, in my opinion. This week.
I'll give you some equity back, Sean. I'll take James White at 4,500 over Gurley.
Oh, okay, booked.
I'm looking here. I got something. I mean, Gurley is going to be the nut play whenever they play San Francisco, because his passing game involvement has been incredible.
Yeah,
I've seen a ton of targets. Trying to see what week that is. This might be one of the championship weeks. So just go we're calling our shot right now on Todd Gurley.
It's week 16.
Bummer. Week 16. Yeah,
any thoughts on Darren Sproles? Pretty cheap on DraftKings, especially if we're assuming that he's going to get some of the passing game action.
Yeah, I think he's a lock for 3 to 6 targets and, high percentage targets and 10 to 15 carries. So at 4,300, he's going to get vultured by Ryan Matthews, which is going to suck, but he's only 4,300. So like it comes with built into the price. So I think Sproles is a fine play. Like Pete said, he was pretty unlucky, I think, to not have a bigger score last week, not just because the punt return, but just because when you're touching the ball that often and you're as explosive as he is in the open field, like he's going to break one at some point. So I think 4,300 is way too cheap for Darren Sproles. I actually think he's okay for cash this week.
Yeah.
I love Sproles in this spot. I mean, 9 targets last game in the passing game, 13 rush attempts. The other thing that you love about Sproles for tournaments is you can double dip with Philadelphia defense, which I don't think many people will go to because of Atlanta. But if you're going to ride and die with Sean here, and I'm starting to get behind this Eagles thing. I mean, that's a really good spot. That's how the Eagles win by double digits. Is the defense plays extremely well, and Sproles maybe gets a special teams touchdown.
Yeah, I like it. Another guy in that range I have ranked close to Sproles. I might be a little biased, but Chris Ivory, he's 3.4K. This is a rare game where I have the Jaguars favored, actually. I just think they're going to be a more balanced team when they can, obviously. And I think, as you saw last week, they're going to try to run through Ivory. So Ivory is an interesting play at 3.4K. He's not anybody I'm going to consider for cash or anything, but, for GPPs, I think Ivory's a guy I'm going to be keying on too.
Yeah, I like that. I haven't looked at him hard enough, but I'm going to because I love the way he runs. And I agree with you that, Jacksonville should be able to win this game. I don't know how many times I've said that over the last 5 years. I feel like most people on Jacksonville and Cleveland than any other teams by far, but I feel like Jacksonville should show up here.
Well, Sean, why don't you set a line for Chris Ivory in terms of DK points?
I'm going to have to adjust a little bit. I would say 9.5.
We have, ours aren't adjusted yet. We only have 5.6, but that's going to go up.
I want over on 9.5 personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty good bet to score touchdowns. So I'll say over too.
Okay.
I would go over. I think we're all on the over.
What's the line where you want I'll take over on 10.5.
All right, I'll get some free points here. I'll take 9.5. The odds make.
Under? We all want the over. That's the problem.
No, I'm saying I'll take under 9.5. You guys hammer me. As a true odds maker, I'm just gonna have to eat it.
Put the line out there, yeah.
I can't take it back. So
okay. Wow, all right, we need to give you some equity back.
Yeah, it's a gentleman.
I gave it to him. I gave him James White against.
Yeah,
I haven't given anything back. Who else do you want right now, Sean? Or what guy are you bullish on?
Let's see. Let's do a Mariota prop.
Okay, I'll take a quarterback. I'll take Simeon versus Mariota or something like that versus you.
Okay, yeah.
I'll take Simeon versus Mariota. That seems reasonable. Give you some equity back.
Thank you.
I know Levitan mentioned Jordan Reed. Do we need to hit on tight ends a little bit more?
Yeah, I'll take Gronk versus 2 tight ends. If anyone wants to do that.
No, thank you.
What about this? How about this? I'll take Gronk, and I get one other tight end. You get the field. Highest points.
Fine, I'll give you
Yeah, I mean
that's like really generous. That has to.
I have that calculated. That's you're about 35% right there. I'll take that.
You have that calculated. Wow.
Yeah, I have Gronk. He's about 25 to 26% for highest. Yeah, for highest scored, and then Reed and Olsen are right behind with like 9.3%. So I'll buy into that.
Okay, so I offered it out there, so I have to do it for future reference. Like 3 or 4 guys. That would probably be the best. Like 3.5 would probably be if I took the top 3.5.
Yeah. If you take like Gronk, Reed, and Olsen, let's say you're making it 50-50 prop.
Okay. All right. So for future reference, this is good. We're getting all the real stuff, so I don't just give away equity like time of the show. All right, I'm going to take Gronk. And the Olsen thing, you guys got me scared now. I'm still going to do it. I'm going to take Gronk and Olsen.
All right. I mean, I obviously have to take the other side of that. So
all 3 of you guys just jump all over it.
Thanks for the equity, Pete.
Okay. Do you guys think that Bill Belichick will key on Jimmy Graham this week? Like, is that the guy that they try to take out? Because if not, like, I want to roster Jimmy Graham every week. Like, he's just like the nuts every week for me. If it's not a situation where Belichick's like, we're going to stop Jimmy Graham. So I'm curious what you guys think.
Yeah, and he had the bye to stew over it. So I think that might be the guy he tries to shut down. If that's the case, then, I'm all in on Baldwin. But hopefully we find out who it is. But, yeah, I think he's going to key on Graham this week.
One of these weeks soon, Tyler Lockett's going to go off. But probably not this week.
All right. Any other final props
Yeah, let's do a Drew Brees passing yards one. I'll throw the line out there. I'm going with 275.5 passing yards.
Over.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Levitan?
Drew Brees passing yards. Oh God. See, I have so much
good line,
respect for
actually.
Denver's scheme, not just their players. You know what I mean? So I understand Aqib Talib's out. I understand Kayvon Webster's out. I'll stay under.
All right.
Okay.
He did only throw for 265 versus Seattle at home, so it's reasonable.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Could
Good.
just run like crazy against Denver with Wolf out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the game plan should be like run Ingram and Hightower like 15, 20 times each again, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, they already announced it's full on timeshare. So I would love a couple Kuhn touchdowns this week just to, I'm I'm not going to have much Ingram or Hightower exposure, so I'm a big Kuhn fan this week.
Yeah.
Or Josh Hill.
Only thing that could help Freedman and I on that is it sounds like which side are you taking? Because I guess you just booked it versus us. So you have two people with the over, one person with the under.
Yeah.
The only thing that could help Breeze is passing game to the running backs. I think that's one area. Brandon Marshall also was on the sideline as well for the Broncos. If I haven't checked on his status, but the defense just really seems beat up. And one area that the Broncos have been getting killed on is passing game with the running backs. We saw the Falcons just destroy them in that regard. So that's the only hope for Breeze. But, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Adam, and certainly understand there's a lot of risk taking the over there.
All right, guys. I think that was an awesome show. We should start doing this in the day more often. All right, we've been speaking with Sean Koerner, Adam Levitan, and Peter Jennings on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker, Adam Levitan, and CSURam88. And you can follow me on Twitter at MattFTheOracle. I'm Matthew Freedman, and this has been the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for Week 10. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podbean. Also, you can contact us via email, podcast@fantasylabs.com. Let us know what you think. Follow us on Twitter at FantasyLabsPods, and be sure to check out all of our content on the site, especially our NFL dashboard with positional breakdowns out on Thursday and previews for each game out by Friday. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck, and we will see you next week.